Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Molly. I'm a recruitment coordinator with Carleton, and I'm here to host you all today. So just a few things before we get started. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you'd like to have answered, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A or chat function. We do also want to just recognize as we start our session today that Carleton campus, myself, even though I'm not on Carleton campus, and many of our instructors and professors are located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. We are very lucky to be able to work and study where we are located in our beautiful campus and take it very seriously, the history of the place that we live. So without further ado, I'll hand it over and we'll learn a little bit more about some of our Carleton programs.
Thank you, Molly. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to our presentation. My name is Mayurika Chakravorty, and I teach in the Childhood and Youth Studies program at the Institute of Interdisciplinary Studies. And I also have here with me Dr. Shazia Sadaf, who teaches in the Human Rights and Social Justice program, also at the Institute of Interdisciplinary Studies. So today we are going to talk to you a little bit, and tell you a little bit about our two programs, and then answer any questions that you might have. And maybe this is also a good time to remind you that after our presentations, we would have some time in our respective booths. So after the presentation, you would be able to also visit either of our, or both our booths, and follow up there with any questions that you might have. Okay, so let me first start with the Childhood and Youth Studies program, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Sadaf, and she's going to talk to you about human rights and social justice. Please bear with me if there's a slight lag with the slides. We tried it, but there was a slight lag, but it should be fine now. So first of all, Childhood and Youth Studies, it provides the students with an interdisciplinary education, and which prepares them for a range of careers, and that involve working with or for children in various capacities. And students here acquire the analytic skills that are required to work effectively with children and youth. Not only that, they also gain an understanding of the complex contexts of childhood and adolescence, and throughout history in various cultural contexts, and thereby they develop a commitment to the welfare of children and youth in Canada, but also beyond Canada, across the world. And one of the, or features that makes the program quite unique is that we incorporate an interdisciplinary and intersectional approaches to childhood. Now, what do I mean by that? Interdisciplinary, essentially, interdisciplinarity is essentially reflected in the courses that we offer, but also in terms of the faculty that teach these courses. And you will see that the faculty comes from a variety of disciplines and bring with them a range of approaches to childhood and youth studies, from history, education, literature, gender studies, disability studies, curatorial studies, critical race studies, children's and youth rights and activism, and all these you will see reflected in the spectrum of courses that are offered in the program. The program also starts with the premise that childhood is not universal. So there's an element of intersectionality. And it's not universal, but essentially childhood lies at the intersection of race, class, gender, caste in certain cultural contexts, etc. So that is something that is very well represented and reflected in the courses that the students take. Another important aspect that I would like to highlight is the opportunity for experiential learning. Not only do we have a second year course that is titled Experiential Learning, yeah, but even other courses incorporate experiential learning in various ways, where the students get opportunities for hands-on learning. I mean, and gain experiences of working with children and youth in various settings. Uh, Beyond these, of course, there are, it's a rigorous undergraduate program, and you acquire transferable skills, in doing research, in critical thinking, in communication, in problem solving, etc. Um, then I thought I'll talk a little bit about the career pathways. I mean, depending on what your interests are, and there are various pathways that this program can open up for you. And this is I'm going to talk about three sectors based on what our students have done in the past, and these three I think sectors can be identified as government and education, community and social services, and health. Many of our students are actually destined for they want to go to they want to become future educators themselves, and they want to join the teachers college, and a lot of them do. But that's not the only path. There are child and youth workers, there's school-based counselors, there are even international development educators, and then other fields that sort of intersect, like journalism, law, corrections, public policy, and so on and so forth. In community and social services, our students have gone on to work as youth outreach workers, family support workers, in recreation, as settlement workers, international development, family counselors, and even children's rights activists. Similarly, in health too, there are a lot of opportunities, and one can work as a pediatric healthcare worker, mental health worker, child and youth counselor, in a substance use worker, infant development worker, residential care, and even as a pediatrician. And I'll see, I mean, it seems like a very wide range of possibilities, and there are these possibilities. And I think one of the reasons you can do this, like you can become so many different things, I mean, depending on your interests, is the way the program is structured. And I'm just going to I think that on the I'm just going to move on, and I'll explain how. Um, so, in why choose this particular program at Carleton? Now, Childhood and Youth Studies program at Carleton, and especially I think with its focus on youth as well as childhood, and its attention to both critical intersectionality, as I pointed out before, but also the focus on children's rights and youth activism, it is literally the only program of its kind in Eastern Ontario. And the structure of the program that I was referring to before also makes it unique, where when you enter the program, there is a one credit introductory course, a year long course that every student in the program has to take. But beyond that, it's really quite open. So you can take electives, according to your choice, according to your interests, according to perhaps the future career pathway that you want to take. So depending on your interests, you can take your courses in health, in education, in psychology, in a wide array of disciplines, and thereby kind of tailor the program to your own interests and your own future vision for your career. So that is this, it allows you to customize your program to your specific career interests. That is very unique, because a lot of lot of programs, they start off with a very rigorous first year where you have to take a set of courses, whereas here you begin with just one course in your first year that gives you ample opportunities to take courses from other programs and other units on campus. And also the opportunities I would like to again highlight for experiential learning. I mentioned the second year course on experiential learning, but also other courses that incorporate experiential learning. But we also have a third year practicum course, and where it is also a year long course, and for one whole year you get an opportunity to work in a setting where you directly have the opportunity to work with children and youth. There's also opportunity or scope for applied research. A lot of our students in their fourth year, they can choose between course work and writing an honors thesis, and a lot of our students choose to do that, and thereby by the time they end the program, they already have that experience of doing research with children and youth. Um, so that was, in a nutshell, a little bit about the Childhood and Youth Studies program. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Sadaf, who's going to talk to you about the human rights and the social justice program.
Thank you very much, Myreka. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk about the program. The slides may be a little slow, so it might take a bit of time to reach the slide which has, human rights and social justice. So we are, so like Myreka said, we are two programs within one unit, which is called the Institute of Interdisciplinary Studies. And from the name itself, you can judge interdisciplinarity is important to both of these programs. And that's kind of the key phrase when you're coming into it. You get a very interdisciplinary approach. I'll wait for the next slide. Okay, so this program focuses on two different areas. So the topics are wide and interdisciplinary. And the way that we look at them is very critical. And it's very, very important to look at human rights and social justice from a critical perspective, because otherwise we would just be passively looking at issues that are happening around the world. And a lot is happening around the world. So one has to focus on the ability to look at everything that's happening around us from a critical viewpoint. And that is very important to our program. So not only is the interdisciplinarity important to us because we're coming at the topic of human rights and social justice from different angles, but also being critical is very important to our program. Next slide. And thank you, Myreka, for changing the slides. Okay, so because we call our program Human Rights and Social Justice, therefore the two words that are highlighted here, theory and practice, become very important. If we were just doing human rights, we'd be looking at human rights theory and we'd be looking at the Universal Declaration, and everything that should theoretically fix everything in the world. And we would have been just looking at theory, but that's not what we want to do. We want to look at theory, but we also want to look at the practice of that theory, which in turn brings us to social justice issues. So we're not just looking at human rights in theory, we are looking at social justice in practice. So we're understanding the theory, but also looking at people's struggles to overcome inequality and inequities in everyday situations. So the program will equip students with legal, political, and social strategies, and that will help them challenge, hopefully, that will help them challenge in the future forms of discrimination or subordination or persecution. And all of these things and the way they are related to race or religion, gender, sexual orientation, ethnic origin, your political opinions, and also colonization. So we also stress a decolonial, anti-colonial viewpoint when we are looking at human rights, and this is very important to the faculty and the program in general. Next slide. Okay. Why should you come to Carleton and study human rights and social justice at Carleton? There are several reasons, but I'll just highlight the two main reasons. First of all, you have the option to choose from a very wide variety of courses, and these are offered by dedicated faculty from many different fields. In this thing, we are very similar, childhood and youth studies and human rights, in that we give you a lot of flexibility to pick and choose from a lot of other faculties, and do your courses in relative freedom. You can tailor what you do depending on what you want to do in the future. So, for example, if you want to apply to law school, you can focus on taking courses that the Faculty of Law might offer, or social work, or women and gender studies, or indigenous studies. So you have a lot of flexibility with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a few slides down. And then the second thing is that students can gain firsthand experience by doing a practicum course in an organization in their fourth year. So we do a placement. We have connections with organizations in Ottawa, and students in their fourth and final year can do 1 term or 2 terms of placements. So we have 2 half credits. So you can do 1 term or 2 terms, depending on how much or how little a student wants to do. But the practicum placement course in the final year of study is a big plus point. Again, why Carleton? Continuing with that is because we are in Ottawa, which gives us this very good opportunity to work with both governmental and non-governmental organizations, because this is the site of Canada's government. It's the capital city, and you find a lot of organizations that deal with human rights on a federal level, but also, like, internationally. So you have the opportunity to choose what you want to focus on. For example, if you're doing your practicum, you could work with a government organization, you could work with an international organization. If you're very if you're set on working locally with people who are facing discrimination or inequities, then you have the choice to do that. So Ottawa is perhaps the best suited place to find opportunities to work in any organization that interests you. Where can a degree in human rights and social justice take you? Literally anywhere, because human rights and social justice are 2 very important issues. Whichever organization, whichever workplace you get into, they will usually need somebody who supports their organization in making sure that there's justice and equity and diversity. So literally anywhere. You could look at your own university and we'll have a department that takes care of that. You look at the government and there's a department that takes care of that. So human rights degree can literally take you anywhere that you want to go. But if we have to like specify a few fields for you, if what I'm saying does not give you a lot of clarity, you can work for the government. You can work for any organization in the public or private sector that has to do with human rights or wants to uphold human rights and social justice principles. You can work with social services. You can get into law, policy making in the government. You can be an educator or work at a university. You can work in schools. Again, that's where there's a very nice overlap between the two programs. If you do childhood and youth studies, you could work in higher education or in schools, because youth, when you come into university, it's still the same area. Or you could work in, when you've done human rights, you could work in university, obviously with adults, or indeed children. So there's a lot of versatility in the kind of careers that you can have. If you want to get into grad school after doing your undergrad degree in human rights and social justice, we are starting an MA program in human rights and social justice from next year. That might interest you. Or you could get into any other program you want. Like you could get into law. A lot of my students apply to law school and get in, or go on and choose Indigenous studies, women and gender studies. A lot of opportunities for graduate studies as well. So we have 4 different degree programs in our program. So you have the option of doing Human Rights and Social Justice Bachelor of Arts honors degree, or you have the option to do Human Rights and Social Justice Bachelor of Arts combined honors. So you can do a combined honors with another program. There's a special Human Rights and Law combined program. It's called Human Rights and Law with concentration in transnational law and human rights. And this is called the Bachelor of Arts and Combined Honors, but this is specific to law. Or you could do a Human Rights and Social Justice Bachelor of Arts degree, which is a 3-year degree. The other 3 of 4 years, or you would normally take 4 years to complete them. And then I told you I'm going to tell you a little bit about courses and what kind of freedom you have. So the requirements for each of the 4 options that you have, the degree options, vary slightly, but basically for all of them, there's a small number of required core courses that you have to do at the 1st and 2nd year level. But they are a small number. It's not like an overwhelming number of core courses. And then there are 5 thematic groups out of which you need to make a selection. And these 5 thematic groups represent 5 key areas of concern for human rights and social justice. And then there's a number of free electives that you can choose from across the curriculum at Carleton that you can do. The next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the thematic groups, not in detail, just to introduce to you the kind of themes that we have from which you make the selections of your courses. So the 5 thematic groups are laws and institutions, critical principles, political violence, marginalized groups, and social and economic justice. There are many courses to pick from within each thematic group. So within each thematic group, the courses do not just come from within the human rights program. There's a list of courses in each of these thematic groups from other programs: social work, political science, law, Indigenous studies, English. There's a lot of choices from the kind of courses that you can pick. So a lot of freedom. So the list is quite big. So some of the things are written. Some of the courses from other units are specified here on the slide, like legal studies, philosophy, political science, women and gender studies, sociology, anthropology, sexuality studies. But that's not complete representation. We're currently including more courses. And although the courses from these lists make up the bulk of your degree, you can still take courses from across the curriculum when you're doing your electives. So you're not tied down to these. I think that was the last slide. Am I right? Okay. we still have time to take questions. So we have a few minutes, both Mayrika and myself. If you have any questions that you need to ask, now would be the time to ask the questions. So we'll wait a little bit for questions to come in if there are any. Otherwise, we will be available in the booth for half an hour. Half an hour, is it, Mayrika?
Yes.
So
Half an hour.
we'll be there for half an hour. But we can wait here for a few minutes if there are any questions, specific questions that you may need to ask about either of the programs.
I'm not sure if they can ask
You mean through the
Q
okay?
and
How many undergrads are accepted each year? It will be different for the two programs. Mayrika, do you have any number?
we actually do not have. Okay,
Oh,
so this is for human
for
rights.
human rights. We don't really have a cap on like unless there's an overwhelming year where we have like 1,000 students or something. But roughly, I think each year uh, it changes every year. But we take in, I think, at least 60 to 65 students. But there's no real cap on how many students we're taking in. We're happy with as many students as we can have. It's always exciting to have a big class. So the students and their cohorts get to know each other. Under non-COVID circumstances, absolutely. Absolutely, they get to know each other very closely because when you are in the same program, you definitely have to take core courses in which all of you are together and you really get to know your cohort very well. Hopefully, all the restrictions are lifted by the time you guys come in. So there will be a real chance of creating, close friendships. And also the cohorts get to do a lot of group work together. At least in human rights courses, we have group work. We have, like, in my class, for example, there are presentations and debates where groups of students work together, and yeah, you make friendships. I'm sure Mayrika will say the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we are kind of going back to face learning, and hopefully things will be back to normal, uh, pre-pandemic
As normal as
normals.
normal can be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, no, it would be, I think any undergraduate program is, but, our programs too will give you a lot of opportunities um, to make these friendships, to create these bonds that will not only be restricted to your program, but even kind of going forward.
Yeah.
Um,
I would, sorry if I'm cutting you, Mayrika.
no, 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 no,
I,
no,
I
not at
would
all.
like to add that that students make very close friendships and connections with the professors as well. And I'll take the opportunity to talk about both the programs and say that the professors come from diverse backgrounds, and we at Human Rights we pride ourselves on how diverse the faculty is. So we come from different geographical regions, speak different languages, have personal and academic knowledge about different geographical regions in the world and different issues that are not just limited to Canada or North America. So our programs are very prolific in that way, and I think that not many programs have that much diversity in their faculty. Literally, if you look at the human rights faculty, each faculty member is from a different region, different part of the globe. Um, and there's a lot of diversity in childhood and youth studies as well. So creating those friendships gives you a wider outlook on these issues, and then if you did not have that diversity in the faculty. You're seeing from both Mayrika and myself that we bring in that diversity just being present here, and you can judge that we come from different backgrounds. And although we are Canadian, we bring in a lot of knowledge from other places.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Is there any co-op or internship opportunities? Internship, yes, because we do the placements. So practicum courses are, I wouldn't, Marika, it wouldn't be internship, but it would be working with an organization. So
Absolutely.
we place you with an organization where you have firsthand work experience with an organization. So it's not an organized co-op, but it is similar to that. And you have the same kind of thing, Mayurika, in childhood.
Yes, we have the practicum, a third year course, and it's a year-long course, and where for the whole year you are placed at a particular institution, and then you get the opportunity to work with children and youth.
And for human rights, you get to work in mm, a lot of different places. You can work with NGOs, you can work with Amnesty, Climate Commons, Youth Ottawa, Boys and Girls Club, other units within the government that will facilitate our students to come in and learn about the workings. So um, I was running the practicum 2 years ago, pre-COVID, and we were working with 21 different governmental and non-governmental organizations and placing students there depending on student interest. So we invite students to tell us about what their interest is if they sign up or if they register for that course, and then we match them up to the institutions according to their own interest and where they want to work. So yes, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. So I guess, Molly, unless there are any other questions.
Yeah, I'll give students just to say 2 more minutes if anybody
Yeah,
has a
absolutely.
question.
We'll just wait for a bit.
Sure.
So we've had some good questions coming in, so thank you,
Oh,
Max.
yeah.
And if anybody else wants to just pop a question in really quick, we'll get that answered before we end our session for today.
Oh, that's interesting. Somebody's saying, I'm asking for my cousin who's applied. She couldn't be here today. She's lived in Qatar, Switzerland, Singapore, and has done some service through her school. So this program is perfect. I would say
Wonderful.
absolutely. And also because the classes, like I said, are critical. So we have students have a lot of discussion in classes. They're very active classes. They're not just passive. Students are not just passive listeners. So if students bring in a lot of experiences from different parts of the world, that's perfect because that's what we want and what other students want. They want to have interactions not just between the professor and themselves, but between their own groups, and they work in groups, they have discussions in groups, we have tutorials in which students have discussions. So your cousin could bring in a lot of knowledge from where she's been, or where she's been and what she knows, and this would absolutely be perfect for her.
All right, well, I think I'll go ahead and end the session here. It doesn't look like we've got any more questions coming in. So thank you all again so much for coming. And thank you for our presenters. It was lovely having you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Molly,
you.
Marika, and everybody who was here today.
Thank you very much.